I note with interest the decision of the Honorable Justice Kangaloo in the High Court today in the matter concerning Anand Ramesar, whereby the judge gave an injunction in favor of Mr. Ramesar. And this injunction would have been against the Police Service Commission, which seems to effectively restrain them from proceeding with the process of seeking to appoint a commissioner until late in October. So that's you talking about maybe 6 weeks they are being delayed in the process. Now, the ripple effect of this judgment can have far-reaching consequences because it can further delay an already drawn-out process, which is already mired in controversy, and public confidence has been plummeting in the Police Service Commission and the way this entire exercise has been, managed, thus far. And I mean, while it may not be the fault of the Police Service Commission because they are constrained by the legislation they have to work with, the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, you have to consider how does the public view and perceive what is turning out to be a circus and really a comedy of errors. You ask yourself, what happens now if this process has to be pushed back for about 6 weeks? Does it mean that the PSC can even continue its work on compiling a short list of candidates? Does it mean that the PSC cannot continue the investigations, which is supposed to have started already under former Justice of Appeal Stanley John? If there's a candidate who was knocked out in the early rounds, and that candidate now gets an injunction, does this now open the door for other candidates who were knocked out in the early rounds to also come back and make similar claims? And then does this mean that the entire process will now have to be restarted? Then you ask yourself, what happens when former Acting Commissioner Griffith comes back from vacation and there is now somebody occupying the post? You have McDonald Jacob, who is now Acting Commissioner of Police. What rank and substantive position will former Acting Commissioner Griffith now have? Remember, he was never a Deputy Commissioner of Police. He's never someone who worked his way up through the ranks to say that he can revert to his previous rank. So what then becomes his position? It just creates a messy, untidy scenario all around. Because if it is that he was sworn in as an SRP, as is sometimes done, and then appointed as commissioner, does he now revert to the position of an SRP while McDonald Jacobs continues as acting commissioner? It creates discomfort and unease all around in the way this entire process has been managed. Then you ask yourself, when will the investigative team headed by former Justice of Appeal Stanley John, when will they complete their exercise and their investigation? Because, there's a lot hinging on that now. And when will they hand in these findings to the PSC? One has to remember also, even for that investigative team, similar in the case of Keith Rowley versus Integrity Commission, where the court ruled that you must give the subject of the investigation the fullest and fairest opportunity to meet and treat with any allegations against them and to be able to adequately answer them before you make a finding and recommendation. So even that body, as an independent investigative body, has to meet certain criteria and afford certain basic rights and privileges to the persons they are investigating. As the nation would recall, the result of that decision in the Keith Rowley versus Integrity Commission matter was that the entire Integrity Commission at the time collapsed, and they had to demit office. So you ask yourself also, what if one of these subjects of such an investigation files an application for judicial review also? Does that then further delay the process of this investigative team's report while we await the outcome of that judicial review matter? You see, one needs to bear in mind that even though the PSC may not have, the resources of its own to conduct these investigations personally, it has a duty to investigate any negative allegations against any candidate before making any recommendations for appointment. And the Privy Council case of Jamaicans for Justice versus the Police Service Commission, which is a recent Privy Council decision from 2 years ago, coming out of Jamaica, right, an appeal from Jamaica. The Privy Council ruled in that matter, and it's very instructive, and it's binding on us here in Trinidad and Tobago as a decision for the principles which the Privy Council espoused in that matter. In that matter, there were allegations that Superintendent Hewitt, who was one of the candidates for seeking to be appointed, had a very curious relationship with a string and series of extrajudicial killings, and there were questions raised in that regard. The PSC did a cursory, investigation which really just scratched the surface. And this group, Jamaicans for Justice, which had been agitating and calling for a proper investigation, they said, no, that's not good enough. That is not proper discharge of your duties as a police service commission. The matter went all the way to the Privy Council, and the Privy Council ruled in favor of the group Jamaicans for Justice. And the Privy Council held that the Police Service Commission has a duty to fully investigate. And in Jamaica, there's this body called INDICOM, which is the Independent Investigative Commission, which investigates allegations against all members of all arms of the security forces. And I think we in Trinidad and Tobago ought to look at setting up such a body. It covers all members of the protective services, Coast Guard, Army, it covers, firefighters, police officers, wherever. Once you are a member of the protective services and the defense force and you fall under the Ministry of National Security, this body, this independent commission, INDICOM, has that authority in Jamaica to investigate all allegations. And in this case, Jamaicans for Justice versus Police Service Commission, the Privy Council ruled that the Police Service Commission in Jamaica had a duty to use the resources of INDICOM and commission an independent investigation into the allegations against Superintendent Hewitt before proceeding to make an appointment. So here in Trinidad and Tobago, similarly, the principle would apply, and this is a Privy Council decision, which is our final court of appeal. So the principle would apply, and we have a duty here in Trinidad and Tobago to also ensure that any allegations are fully investigated against any candidate. So if it is that there are allegations of illegal kickbacks in the granting of firearms licenses, or there are allegations of officers being convicted of disciplinary charges, or allegations of extrajudicial killings, whatever it is, the Police Service Commission does have a duty to fully investigate any such matters, and they need to consider those matters before making any appointment or recommendation for appointment. So this soap opera appears to only be just beginning, and unfortunately, while the nation waits and is on tenterhooks awaiting the appointment of a substantive commissioner of police, the parody and grand theatre continues to play itself out in the courts of law in Trinidad and Tobago while we await the decisions.